Hello there, good afternoon. I am Emefa Akosia Adeti and welcome to Joy News today. We're live on DSTV channel 421 and GoTV channel 125. We're also coming to you live from our studios here in Kokomlemle, Accra. Coming up this afternoon, there is public appetite for military intervention as the majority of Ghanaians back military takeover if leaders abuse power.
So we are feeling when the military leaders come, they do very well. They do everything to reset the country. And it moves on very well.
Look, Burkina now. If the military way they do it take over power now. See how the Burkina is doing now. What about Ghana? Look, Ghana, everything they do corruption. They chop money.
Stay with us because we have more from the CDD Afrobarometer 2024 report. Also, the Asante Otumfuo Osei Tutu II has begun mediation efforts to resolve the long-standing Boko conflict. Representatives of the feuding factions are meeting at the Mensha Palace in Kumasi. We're on ground. Stay with us. And also, Ghana rolls out standardized chip-embedded passports to improve security and ease of access. And a little later as well, Vice Chancellor's Ghana calls for the retirement age of university lecturers to be raised from 60 to 70.
Consider maybe extending the retirement age for the academics, not the professional staff, but for the academic staff to 65 years with a possibility of staying on till about 70.
We have business, sports, and showbiz also in this package. Joy News, independent, fearless, and credible. Please stay. Many thanks for choosing us this afternoon. First, a growing number of Ghanaians have expressed support for military intervention in the country's politics if elected leaders abuse their political mandate. Now, according to the 2024 Afrobarometer survey conducted by the Center for Democratic Development Ghana, CDD, 51% of respondents believe that the Ghana Armed Forces should assume control if governance deteriorates. This marks an 11 percentage point increase from 40% recorded in 2022. Now, on your screen now is a breakdown of how we have traveled from 2013 all the way to 2024. Now, Ghana's democracy and politics. So, in 2013, the percentage for democracy, People's Perspective, was recorded 82%. And then in 2022, it declined to 75.90%, and that's almost about 76%. And still further declined in 2024, 72.80%. Let me correct that one. 76 because we can round it up, or 75.90%. And in 2024, 72.80%. And also, we went further to inquire, according to the Afrobarometer, rejection of military rule, People's Perspective, in 2013 was about 86% and declined in 2022 to 68% and further declined to 62.0% in 2024, which is the current data. Also, the armed forces should never intervene. This was the question that the Afrobarometer was reporting or asking respondents. And here are the People's Perspective as well. 2021 all through to 2023, it's recorded 55%. And then there was another sharp decrease to 2024 to 47% as well, which means that it kept declining. Now, the question again was asked that Ghana Armed Forces should seize power if government abuses its power. Again, in 2022, well, it said it was about 40%. And then in 2024, it decreased to 51%, which means that this is a growing appetite on this data that we're just showing you, which is quite worrying. Now, let's go on Zoom and engage security consultant Professor Kwesi Enin just to understand what may have contributed to this and what will be the way forward. Thank you for joining us, Prof. Good afternoon, and again, thank you. Now, my first question will be, are there specific governance failures or recent incidents which you believe are fueling this increased public support for military intervention? Kindly unmute.
Oh, well, for those of us who are older, always struggling with unmuting.
I can understand,
Well,
Prof.
thank you very much. I think it spans a gamut of reasons, not least the failure of the Fourth Republic, particularly the last 8 years, to distribute the benefits of the democracy. Corruption, excessive disrespect for the electorate, the pride, in which people who have voted for those who came begging for our stand round to treat it like, debt, the closure of the civic space to be able to speak, to engage, to critique. But I also think that if we disaggregate the demographics, you would notice that, I don't know if you can put that on the screen, notice that those who are above a certain age group, around my age or above 50 years, who have experienced different forms of military governance, will have less of an appetite for military.
Right.
But that being the case, I think this steep rise in the preference for military rule demonstrates an increasing sense of failure and disappointment with how our politicians have governed us. But our lack is that we have a military leadership right now who are suave, savvy, and irrespective of the temptations and attractions of using the gun to take power. I am very convinced that they will not be swayed into taking that desperate and dangerous step.
Now, Prof, it's sad because I didn't live in that era. I've come to read and I've heard stories about that era. But could you paint a picture? How dangerous is it for a democracy like Ghana to even entertain the idea of military rule, given our history and even the wider situation, especially in West Africa?
Well, it's extremely dangerous when the populace or a certain segment of the populace begins to romanticize military rule. And one of the young people you put on your screen spoke about Burkina Faso and what Traore is doing. And they realized, some of us, the argument that we have made, that President Mohame's overtures to the Alliance of Sahel States is useful because it contributes in bringing them back into the ECOWAS fold. But even more importantly, that some of the excesses that we've spoken about earlier, a sense of exclusion, the arrogance of power, the feeling that if you don't come from one ethnic group or one family, that you cannot play part of the politics, all have contributed first to the Achampong coup d'etat in 1972, the Spring Revolution in 1979, which was a response to the political decay, but also the decay within the armed forces itself, to which the armed forces itself is still struggling to overcome. So coupism and coups certainly are not the answer to our governance deficits. We need a much more inclusive, robust sense of ownership of how our country must be governed. Does it have a price? Do we pay a price? Yes. There are personal challenges in terms of the intimidation, the possible loss of jobs, the possible loss of income, intimidation of family members and friends, but it is a price worth paying.
Right. Prof, but are there any lessons at all that Ghana can draw from neighboring countries where military takeovers were initially popular, but later led to instability or repression, as you have just tried to at least paint? Are there any lessons at all we can draw?
Well, there are lots of lessons. I mean, without going very far, I mean, the case of Guinea is a case in point. Doumbouya came because Condé had been horribly corrupt, blown about $8 billion unaccounted, promised heaven and, all the all the good things of life. He's now changed the constitution. I think he's going to stand and he will definitely win. The case of Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso are slightly different. But the history of coups on our continent, and we've seen it in Gabon. The military leader has just turned himself into a democratically elected one. But even in our own country, or the manner in which the late General Afrifa Kutuka and others skewed the 1969 elections for Dr. Buzia to win. We've seen the way Achampong wanted to transform himself into a civilian leader through the union government process, and Mr. Rawlings's transition from the PNDC, the People's, the Provisional National Council, to the NDC.
NDC, yeah.
So irrespective of the initial rhetoric of wanting to create an enabling environment, it always ends up in that military regime transforming itself into a democratic one, and sometimes considerably worse than the democratic regimes that we overthrew.
Prof, I mean, beyond the worry that I hear in your voice, because especially the harrowing experience during military regime, I like to think that there may be some responsibilities that the civil society organizations, religious bodies, traditional leaders play in restoring public trust in democratic governance. Do you agree? And how do you think they can do that?
However, our civil society has become increasingly uncivil. They've appropriated the language of inclusion, of decency, of accountability, of checks and balances. But there's an almost unhealthy appetite and race for civil society to transition into part of government. And I think lies the weakening of the civil society voice and the spaces within which civil society can engage. Of course, people can make the debate unless we cannot sit on the sidelines and always continue to critique and to talk. But being a member of civil society demands on us that we are driven by this desire to almost naturally become, contrarian, look for where the gaps and the faults are, and to prefer suggestions for solutions. We don't need to be in the thick and at the center of the politics and the games. And until civil society continues to play this role of being the mirror that reflects how government is performing, have the ability to critique neutrally, objectively, then you lose that voice. Because immediately you are giving something small, ability to critique becomes difficult. And then you walk this very thin ethical line between supporting those who have appointed you and then the work that civil society must do. And I think we've done well in the Fourth Republic, but in the last 10 years or so, we are beginning to, to lose that independence.
Right.
And I think we need to be careful.
Prof, always a pleasure to have you have conversations on such topics. But before I let you go quickly, today, and I've been telling my audience that I'll bring them that story, the Asante-Hene will start the mediation on the Boko conflict. And before I let you go, what are your expectations of that mediation that is to start today?
Well, I think it's a useful step. I just don't think that the Boko crisis is ripe for mediation and for settlement. We are being driven by the emotive scenes that we have witnessed the last 3 to 4, 5, 6 months. Parties themselves are far from ready to begin to talk. We don't even know who the parties are. We think this is a Kusasi, Mampusi, chieftaincy, identity conflict. I have argued, and I continue to argue, that it goes beyond that. A binary focus on these two groups means that we really don't understand the complexity of this, problem. But any intervention, I would support it, but I am quite skeptical as to the outcome.
Prof, thank you for sharing your thoughts on these two issues happening in the country. Do have a good one today. But back to the concerns about that growing appetite for military rule amid when governance is failing. Some Ghanaians have been reacting to the findings, cautioning the government to work in the interest of the people to avoid unrest.
Young military coup leaders are doing very good. Currently, we are seeing what's the name? This man, Burkina Faso military leader. He is doing very good for Burkina Faso, and the Sahel Alliance. They are doing very good for their countries. So we are feeling when the military leaders come, they do very well. They do everything to reset the country, and it moves on very well. So if and only if our democratic political leaders are abusing power, abusing office, then we will love the military men to reset the country.
Because like military, like about me, I like military past other person. Just take an example. The return, Honan be yes I never. Look Burkina now. If the military way they do what, it take over power now. See how the Burkina is doing now. What about Ghana? Look Ghana, everything, they are corruption, they chop money. Benifuano, they chop money, just anyhow. They don't do anything. You just make a cry here. Everybody wake up, they come see Accra, they day. What did they do?
I have done with regards to military takeovers, you realize that oftentimes they leave a lot of scars and wounds that over the period remain unresolved. This is because they come into power and then they realize that actually what they thought should have been the situation isn't the situation at all.
Now, the Asante-Henny Otumfuo Osei-Tutu II is set to commence mediation efforts today aimed at resolving the long-standing Boko conflict. The talks will be held at the Mensah Palace in Kumasi, with representatives from the feuding factions expected to be present. Despite previous government interventions, the conflict has persisted, heightening calls for the Asante-Henny's involvement. Earlier this year, Otumfuo emphasized the importance of dialogue, truth, and reconciliation in addressing the dispute. Now, let's cross over to the Mensah Palace, where my colleague Nana Boakye-Yiadom is standing by with more. Nana, what more, or can you at least give us a sense of the atmosphere at the Mensah Palace this afternoon?
If you come into the Mensah Palace in the Ashanti region this afternoon, it's a very busy atmosphere over here with the Asante-Henny expected to commence several mediation in the palace alongside the topical one, which is that of the Boko conflict. The Asante is expected to meet the two factions and then commence the mediation process in no time. But today we have been told that it is going to be the day for reporting. Well, the two factions are going to report themselves to the Asante, and then he would hold a private meeting with them. But then from the details that we've picked from the Secretariat of the Mensah Palace, we've been told that the exact or extensive engagement is going to be tomorrow, where we would have the factions and other government officials going to join the mediation process. But then today they are going to have the reporting for the factions in this particular conflict, reporting to the Asante-Henny. And so a very tense atmosphere here while the Asante-Henny awaits the arrival of those who are in this conflict, MFR.
Well, Nana, so certainly some of the stakeholders and representatives may be on their way, but do we have any idea who these key stakeholders or representatives from the feuding factions attending today's reporting, I should say?
We know that they are going to include the chiefs of the fueling factions, and then we are going to have the government officials, including probably the defense minister and then the interior minister, who are going to represent government in this whole process. That is the details that we've picked. Earlier this year, we realized that the Asantehene was officially informed by the defense minister to accept government invitation to lead the mediation process. The Asantehene gave his clear stance on the matter, indicating that he is going to lead the mediation process, but called for truth and then the depoliticization of the whole mediation process. And so we're expecting the same process to go ahead with the mediation, if it is going to start today or tomorrow. And we're expecting that the government officials, the other chiefs from the factions, are also going to join the conversation. I'll be joined by teacher Safo Kantanka, and he's going to give us a brief engagement as to what the Asantehene is going to actually say when it comes to this whole process. Teacher Kantanka, you're live on Joy News. The Asantehene is going to meet the factions very soon. We are being told that it's going to be tomorrow. What are we to expect from the meeting?
Well, it's the very beginning of the meeting, so you will not expect much. It is only when we have got to second or third step, getting to the middle of it, that you can deduce something out of it. And since they are going to meet for the first time, it will be very difficult to tell how it's going to work out. In any case, it will still work out well, because since they have agreed to come and meet Otumfuo and accept him as the mediator, it is clear that everything will work out well.
And so tomorrow, we're expecting both of them to be at the palace with the Asantehene and then government officials joining. And so you believe, hopefully, that there's going to be a resolution to this?
Absolutely, but it's not the final solution. It's the beginning of the solution.
Thank you very much. And teacher Safo Kantanka is a historian at the Menchia Palace, and he says that this is the very beginning of the mediation process, expecting the factions to be here with Asantehene leading.
Thank you, Nana. And do stay with us. Nana Boakye is our man on ground and trust us to bring you every detail and everything that will happen at the Menchia Palace as and when we can. But away from that, I'll now take you to following the suspension of the Chief Executive Officer of the Tamale Teaching Hospital and the disruption of emergency services at the facility, the chairman of Parliament's Health Committee, Market Nawene, is urging health facilities nationwide to prioritize the repair, re-equipment and proper resourcing of the operations through the use of internally generated funds. Mr. Nawene is also advocating for the creation of escrow accounts for health facilities across the country to ensure greater transparency and financial accountability.
As I speak, I can confirm that they started work. We were there, we spent 2 hours with the doctors who are on strike. And I believe that when you give people opportunity to speak and to out their problems, then the problems is half solved. They had us and we spoke with them, and after that the Yana also came in. And they also spoke with the representatives of the Yana, and they started emergency services. But as we speak now, I believe that they'll be able to reach an agreement with Young Mother Association, the Ghana Medical Association, because that was the hindrance. They had to come in to agree that they should stop their and I'm sure that they'll be able to do that. So as we speak now, we've started work. It's just left with putting a statement together and letting you the press also know that they started working.
Has the CEO been reinstated? Because earlier last week I saw something that the president has appointed a new person to replace.
The issue of the CEO and then their strike unfortunately occurred at the same time, and so people are linking the two. But what I meant is the doctors, nobody spoke about the dismissal of the CEO. it was that confrontation that went viral. That was the cause. And I believe that we'll be able to understand each other. You know, one got annoyed, the other one also got annoyed. And so the two of them got annoyed, but they didn't blow each other. Did they? No. No, they walked away. It can happen to anybody.
Away from that, Vice Chancellor's Ghana is urging the government to review and extend the retirement age for university lecturers from 60 to 70 years, highlighting the need to retain experienced academics and strengthen the country's higher education system. At a forum, the Executive Secretary, Dr. Sena Beglo Freku, argued that the current retirement age is pushing many seasoned lecturers and researchers into early retirement at a time when their expertise is crucial for mentoring younger academics and meeting the growing demands of tertiary education. According to him, the proposal seeks to address the widening gap in faculty members and ensure academic excellence across the country's universities.
Now, universities form part of a global knowledge economy. A university professor is more like wine. The older, the better, right? So what we are proposing, what VCJ is proposing, is that in order to ensure the long-term capacity of universities and also to promote institutional autonomy, if the committee could consider maybe extending the retirement age for the academics, not the professional staff, but for the academic staff to 65 years with a possibility of staying on till about 70. So instead of 60, it becomes 75, and then you can have maybe post-retirement, right, up to about 70.
Meanwhile, the University Teachers Association of Ghana, UTAG, is cautioning against any state interference that could undermine academic freedom. Dr. Mamudu Akurugu, president of UTAG, emphasized this concern during his address.
Increasingly, we are getting that emerging as a serious threat to academic freedom, that the chief of the area can say, this must be the vice chancellor. Whatever it is, this must be the principal. And I think that is even a bigger threat than the government, because for the government, we can always have our ways of pressuring government to bow to our, especially the labor unions. But we can't demonstrate against the chief, the overlord of the area. You can't do anything. And so it's even a bigger challenge for us. So how do we move to also ensure that whatever that we want to put in this constitution takes also into consideration the growing influence of these traditional authorities?
Now, Professor Ahmed Jidapo Abdullahi, Director General of the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, joins me via phone. And now, Prof, thank you for joining us. Now, what is your initial reaction to the call by Vice Chancellors of Ghana to extend the retirement age to at least 70?
Well, I think, first of all, we need to look at the reasoning behind that request. And when I say we need to look at the reasoning behind that request, the Vice Chancellors are not calling for extension of retirement to 65. Neither are they calling for extension of retirement to 80. They are calling for extension of retirement to 70. What informed the number 70? That said, as you are aware, government has a policy which was reiterated by the Honorable Minister of Education, that post-retirement contracts are awarded to faculty who meet a certain minimum threshold of either being a senior lecturer or an associate professor above. And in fact, in the award of that post-retirement contract, you need to meet a certain benchmark, which is one, whether the institution is ready to use your services, whether you are physically fit, and whether you are needed by the university as a whole. So this is a policy that exists. Again, the Vice Chancellors are managers of the institution. They are not the leadership of the unions that organizes the teaching faculty. I just saw UTAG speak to it. So yes, the call may be laudable. We need to interrogate it. But we also have to look at the reverse. There are some who do not even want to stay beyond 60. There are some people who want to retire at 60. In fact, there are some who would want to retire at 50, 55.
So we need to look at all that. But at the end of the day, what government is interested in is quality of delivery. Quality of delivery. So if you are 70 and you can deliver, that is why you are given the opportunity to what? To move and stay in office. In fact, there are people who are 70 who still want to stay in office. They want to stay beyond 70 and teach. There are some who are 55 who retire. But we cannot do anything in affront to the Constitution of the Republic.
But beyond what the government seeks to achieve in that existing policy, and with your expertise, is it a call that you think is needed as a country?
Well, what I think is that at the end of the day, I mean, we within the lectureship or the professorial enclave are public servants, and we subscribe to the overall Constitution of the Republic. That is why we are given a special dispensation. And I don't think the special dispensation which is given to us is something that is broken that needs to be fixed. Okay. I think the policy as it is now is one that is working, is one that weeds out. In fact, there are people who are professors who apply for post-retirement contract and they are denied because of a number of reasons. So I don't think it should be a wholesale application.
But can it be bespoke? Can it be bespoke? Can it be bespoke if the policy is not made open, just like what we have originally, or the general terms where you can retire at 60, but some people retire earlier than 60. So should it be bespoke, or it should just, the government should extend it anyway, and if the Vice Chancellor wants to stay till 70, they will stay. If they don't, then they can retire earlier than 70?
Well, as I said, the Constitution as it stands now, informed by the law, says that every public servant retires at the age of 60. There's no ambiguity about it.
Okay.
However, government, mindful of the uniqueness of this group of people, informed by the richness of how long they stay in office, have come up with a policy that, look, if you are 60, if you are a senior lecturer, you can retire at the age of 65. In fact, it's not retirement, it's post-retirement contract. Everybody retires at 60, and that needs to be established. You are given a contract, and that contract needs to go through a certain process.
Right.
There are individuals who do not get the opportunity. In fact, lecturers are not allowed to go beyond the age of 60. There's a reason why. And it doesn't mean that you cannot teach. There's another avenue. That avenue is you can teach as a part-timer, you can teach as a voluntary, or you can teach as a consultant. So it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to be on payroll for you to be able to teach.
Right. I mean, before I let you go finally, imagine the government hears this call and nurses the idea to shift it to 70, beyond the 65, or the nuances that will come with it. We're already facing issues with youth unemployment. How can we balance the need to retain experienced academics, as they have said, while creating space for younger scholars as well to enter the profession?
Exactly. So you've answered the request of the Vice Chancellor. So as I indicated, we need to look at it from the other end. You have to look at the pros and the cons. At the end of the day, one end is that based on longevity in service, it brings about experience. However, there are other group of people who are energetic, who are eager and ready to come into the lectureship profession, who have the requisite qualification in terms of PhD, and the level of enthusiasm that they bring to the job is more than those who have stayed in office for 60 years and above. So you have to look at both ends.
Right.
But at the end of the day, as I indicated, there's that platform that gives experienced people the opportunity to stay on post-retirement contracts.
Professor Abdallah, thank you for talking to us this afternoon. You're watching News Today. Please stay still till come. Young entrepreneurs in Kumasi optimistic that the Ejumara initiative set to be launched by President Mahama this afternoon will be a game changer. The initiative aims to create 20,000 jobs annually, offering hope to many. Please stay.
Welcome back to Business here on Joy News Today. My name is Winston Taki, and now to our first business story. Governor Dr. Johnson Isiama has assured that the days of extreme volatility for the cedi against the US dollar are behind us. The Ghanaian currency has shown remarkable stability in recent times, even experiencing occasional appreciation against the dollar. This positive trend has been further supported following the staff-level agreement with the IMF. In an interview with Joy Business in Washington, D.C., Dr. Isiamah emphasized that this upward momentum will continue.
Does the bank take this?
Well, it's been broad-based. Remember a number of things. The external sector has been quite strong, admittedly, in the last couple of years. We've seen some strength, further strengthening there as well. Remittances has been doing very well. Gold, gold is the new kid on the block. Gold inflows have been doing very, very well. And also don't forget cocoa. Cocoa inflows have also been doing quite well. And so on the whole, and when it comes to coordination as well, if you see the way the fiscal has been, has been running so far, that has been supportive, as well. So it's all about discipline. It's all about a strong, external sector. That is what you are seeing on the city. Going forward, we think that we have enough reserves, to be able to preserve the stability. But I must be quick to add that we are not, going to operate a fixed exchange rate regime. The cedi is an endogenous variable. It has to be, allowed, to float. It can go up, it can come down. Our, focus is to ensure that it is not excessive when it comes to its volatility. And so we are aware of trends this week. We are monitoring, issues. We believe that the market is resetting. We believe that expectations are being re-anchored. And so we are on top of the game. We are observing it by the minute, and we'll look at it,
Doc, do you think that the market is responding to the good news coming from the fourth review, the reserve accumulation? Because the cedi has seen some strong rallying, even going into this week as well. I know you are already aware. What do you make of this development?
Absolutely. So that's why I said it's a broad-based of factors. The staff-level agreement, it was like a seal of approval that, yes, we are restoring macroeconomic stability, we are doing the right things. And then the fact that, of course, don't also forget that the dollar itself, is weakening as well. But then the external sector has been strong. Those inflows have been doing pretty well. Gold is doing so well now. Our prayer is that the trend continues. But what I can tell you is that the days of excessive volatility in the cedi, it's coming to an end. Macroeconomic stability is a public good. What we have on our hands still is the fight against inflation. But so long as the cedi is, strengthening, then it also makes it easier for us to control inflation going forward.
Now we'll go straight to Kumasi to speak to Max Wagbugba, who is going to give us updates on the launch of the Jumura project, which is going to be launched by the president today. But before that, let's go to more business updates. The Ghana Association of Forex Bureau is urging Ghanaians to avoid doing business with Forex bureaus that fail to issue receipts of VAT invoices. According to its president, Dr. Alex Akpagbili, the association is working to sanitize the sector and promote professionalism among Forex operators.
Needed transparency that they are looking for is now, with them.
Now, Doc, let me come to your members. There were concerns with respect to some not issuing VAT. Somewhere last 2 years, the central bank actually also embarked on this same distress action, closing down some of these Forex bureaus. How, going forward with this new leadership, how are you going to ensure that these members, respect or fall within this or comply with respect to these guidelines set from by the Bank of Ghana?
Well, it's all about education, okay? It's all about education. The unfortunate thing is this, that some of the regulatory requirements, let me say sorry, that they were more tailored for banks and other financial or deposit takers. Okay. So the mismatch, and it's the same thing that they want us to do. You see, but so the mismatch have not helped.
With just 8 days remaining until the expiration of President John Mahama's 120-day social contract with Ghanaians, the government is rolling out a series of key initiatives during what is called an All Action Week. One of the most anticipated programs is the Jumewura initiative, which is set to be launched in a few hours by the president. The initiative aims to create 20,000 jobs annually. The program has sparked optimism among young entrepreneurs in Kumasi who see it as a potential game changer for the country. Presidential Affairs Correspondent Maxwell Gbagba now joins me on phone for more update. Hello, Maxwell. Great. Can you give us an update on the current situation in Kumasi, and also how is the atmosphere amongst the youth so far?
Well, at the Front Assembly Hall, where the launch of the Jumewura initiative will take place, that's going to happen at 2 p.m., but already the seats are getting filled with young entrepreneurs and various groups. Now, various interest groups like the Central Market Association, the Toyota Traders Association, the Swami Businessmen Association, who all be represented, with some of them already taking up their seats. The government says that the Jumewura program will initiate and accelerate 10,000 businesses for Ghanaian youth annually, and it says it will also create at least 20,000 jobs annually for young people. And I've been engaging some young entrepreneurs here in Kumasi, some of them who are present at the launch, and they tell me that they are excited about the initiative because they believe that it will address some of the challenges that they face, especially regarding capital to start businesses, and then also workspace, which is a big challenge, for a lot of them. I also spoke to the Minister for Youth Development and Empowerment, George Ofariado. He says the initiative is designed to tackle key barriers in youth entrepreneurship. He says the initiative will among us to deal with the challenges to capital and space faced by young entrepreneurs. Now, we ask that there's a lot, and this Jumewura initiative is different from what we've seen in the past. This is aside from the capital that will be given to some of these young entrepreneurs and mentorship that will be provided to them. Many of them would also be guided along the way. We're told that the first 2,000 people, beneficiaries of this project, are going to enjoy mentorship from successful businessmen. We are also going to get a lot in terms of capital to start their business, marketing, and then, many others. The event itself is scheduled to start at 6 p.m. And already the front hall is getting filled up, and the president is expected to arrive.
Thank you, Maxwell. Maxwell Gbagba is our presidential correspondent giving us update, and we're sure to bring you up-to-date information as this program going on. That's all for business here on Joy News Today. My name is Winston Taki. We have more news for you after this break. Stay tuned.
Time now to bring you sports here on Joy News Today with me, Muftau Nabila Abda. The president of the Ghana Olympic Committee, Richard Akpogavie, has called for unity following his elections to replace Benjamin Mensah as the new leader of the Ghana Olympic Committee. My colleague Victor Achutomaklo has details in this report.
Saturday's victory was a remarkable turnaround for Akpogavie, who 4 years ago missed out on the presidency by 7 votes. Speaking to the press, Akpogavie shared what his priorities will be.
Athlete empowerment, welfare of athletes is important. The athletes have no voice as of now in our governance structure. This cannot go on. It must change. The athletes must be heard. Their voices must be heard at Congress, on the executive board, and at committees. We are here because of the athletes. They must be heard. Secondly, gender. The women must be empowered, must build their capacity so that there will be many more women involved in decision taking as well. And then, one thing which is very important is that there are too many disputes in sports, too many divisions. We need to work as one. We need to work as one. We have one GOC team, several players, but one GOC team. We must focus on building that GOC team so that Ghanaians will support us. Right now, if we are not united, we can't go to any body, any institution, any corporate body and ask for money, because they read all kinds of stories in the paper. So we must get united and build structures in our concern that disputes will be resolved within the sporting fraternity. Build structures that we can resolve through ADR and not go to court, and so many cases in court, and we are not seeing anything, beneficial to the sports disciplines.
Akpokavi will be assisted by baseball president Enes Danso, who is now the third vice president of the Ghana Olympic Committee after beating Mohamed Mahadi by 43 to 19 votes. He joins Malco Afajinu and Frederick Otulati, the first and second vice presidents, as Akpokavi's deputies. There was disappointment for the Ghana Football Association's General Secretary, Prosper Harrisonado, who missed out on the GOC board as George Lamte, Delphina Quay, Kamal Sule, Richmond Kwaku, and George Tete all secured slots on the newly constituted 5-member board. Meanwhile, Ghana Swimming General Secretary Mohamed Muniru has also been elected as the new GOC General Secretary, beating cycling president Mohamed Shanoon by just 3 votes. There was another slim win for badminton president Evans Yeboah, who is now the treasurer of the GOC after winning by a 3-vote margin. He pulled 30 votes to win ahead of Tennis Federation boss Isaac Abuajidua. He'll be assisted by Edward Nidlante Bannerman. Meanwhile, Sports Minister Kofi Adams, who graced the occasion, charged the new leadership to serve with diligence.
President, elections are over. And what is now is leadership. And so, as much as possible, let's try and be blind to who said what and didn't say what in the course of the journey towards this point. Sports, and for that matter, Olympic and non-Olympic sport is what should be the order of the day. And the young ones, especially in the grassroots, as I listened to your story, you told us where you began from. We want the younger ones who are the same where you began from.
That is your sports for now. We do have more sports stories on myjoyonline.com.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to the Showbiz segment with me, Jacqueline and Samar Yeboah. To our story for today, at what point should musicians in church start asking for payment? Legal practitioner and musician Ace Ankuma says if you're playing more than just Amazing Grace, it's time to get a contract in place. He shared this advice on Joy FM's Showbiz A to Z, where the focus was on the rights and responsibilities of creatives in religious spaces. We have more in the following report.
This conversation isn't happening in a vacuum. Earlier this year, Christ Embassy founder Pastor Chris disclosed that some top gospel artists from his church drifted away because, in his words, they were chasing money instead of winning souls. His comments sparked widespread debate on social media.
Time for prayer, they're out. They've gone to another church to do another song. They were professionals, making money from the church, charging for their singing, pretending they were singing praise to God. It was all a charade.
Fast forward, Ace Ankuma argues that while churches invite musicians to uplift worship, performers need clear legal agreements to avoid drama, especially in the music ministry.
For any transaction which requires what the lawyers will call consideration, which is payment, there must be an agreement. And an agreement is arrived at when the two minds meet. The lawyers will call it consensus ad idem. In Tree, we'll say at ntiasia ejuma.
Okay.
Right, where your mind has met mine, and we have understood that for doing this thing, you will do that. So there's a payer and a receiver. It's a contractual relationship. Without that contract, you cannot demand payment. Let's understand that. Okay. Unless and until there's a contract. Now, the contracts come in 2 forms. One is that you are an employee. So you might find that in some churches, they have full-time musicians. They are on salary. They go to work from 8 to 5. And there's honorarium. You know, they basically, we are giving you what, as we like to say, the Lord has put on our hearts.
Ace, who is also a member of Joyful Way Incorporated, didn't spare pastors either. He urged church leaders to invest properly if they want heavenly music quality.
The church now begins to demand Maverick City quality sound. You can't do that with an hour rehearsal at home and a 2 hours rehearsal on Saturday and going on stage. Because now the sound demands more technical input. You will need stems. Stems are actually digital recordings of sound before you perform. So you need to get into a studio, you need to book time, you need to play your basic tracks, get your time sequence, get drums in, and decide which instruments we need to complement. Voices, get singers in to sing. You then learn how to perform on cue. Your musicians now may no longer be able to perform with just wedges. They will need in-ears, so you must buy P16s. The music gets complex. It can reach 12,000 based on where you go and what you want in. Now, also, if you want that quality of sound, even the equipment in your church has to change. The mixer, that analog mixer you have in your church, cannot produce that sound. Right.
So whether you're praising or playing, remember, contracts are just as important as chords if you want to stay in tune with your calling and your coins.
On that note, it's a wrap for the showbiz segment with me, Jacqueline and Suma Yabua. Over to you, MFA Akosiadeti.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And quickly before we wrap up, in line with Asante custom, the Mampong Traditional Council and the Bretio dynasty has officially informed the Asante Hene on the passing of Mampong Hene Dasibre Osei Bonsu II. The solemn announcement at the Mensha Palace, led by Mampong Hema Nana Ejakuma Difie II, marks the end of an era for one of the most respected traditional leaders in the country, Dasibre Osei Bonsu, who until his death served as the vice president of the Ashanti Regional House of Chiefs, was an esteemed occupant of the silver stool in position of immense traditional significance in the Ashanti Kingdom. His role placed him as the second in command in the Ashanti traditional hierarchy, often acting on behalf of the Asante Hene in key matters of custom. Dasibre Osei Bonsu, who was born on 31st December 1939, passed on at age 86 and reigned for 26 years until his ascension to the throne. Well, may he rest in peace as we prepare for the final rites. But that will be, before we wrap, let me just bring in the video.
Me Himaji na Takumadu any Mampong Traditional Council and they say Ayana Mampong Hene Chaneni until there is see na two for no need no and the couple of Amamara Council and send this year necessary. Na hima traditional council na chimiba na yede seven two for and formally say only one somewhere see the idea no ba de baya ya some ya na tintin che won ya say the be you two for asutri say the number 2 the silver stool occupant na we see ahene o chenani
Well, on your screen was the MP for Kweku at Asante Mampong na Aprechim Sapon speaking to Nana Boakye Yiadom, going to tell how it all happened. But that's how we wrap up today's bulletin. For more news, you log on to myjoyonline.com. Thank you for watching. And Jackie, let's take a walk.